Hi, this is Emily, and today I'm at HMAS Kuttabul Heritage Centre. This is a museum of the Navy's history in Australia from 1788 to the present day. I'm here with 3 current serving members, each of whom are officers in the Navy. They'll be here with me for the next hour to answer all of your Navy officer-related questions. So let's start with our introductions. Can you let us know your name, your job role, and your time served in the Navy?
Sure. My name's Joshua Hines. I'm a lieutenant. And I've been in the Navy for 5.5 years, and I'm a Maritime Warfare Officer.
Hi, I'm Tia McKee, Maritime Warfare Officer Submariner, and I've been in for 7.5 years.
Hi, I'm Marty Lee. I'm an electronics engineer, Submariner, and I've been in the Navy for 12 years.
So why did you choose Navy?
My father's in the Navy, so I grew up around ships and wanting to drive them. So really, it was just a natural progression for me. That's what I wanted to do.
For me, I don't really remember what it was that drove me towards the Navy initially. I grew up by the ocean. I wanted to do something to do with sea life. My granddad drove merchant ships in America, like when he was younger. So I think that probably drove me towards boats, but I'm not really sure what it was that instigated that desire initially.
Yeah. I've just always been interested in submarines, fascinated by them, and the Navy is definitely the best place to get that.
Absolutely. And what sparked your interest in your chosen field?
I wanted to drive a ship, so the only way you can do that is to be an MWO. So here I am.
Probably the exact same answer for me. I wanted to drive a warship, I wanted to drive a submarine, so I got to do both of those.
I've always been interested in everything technical, tinkering and whatnot. And when I started to look into Navy jobs, I came across the electronics engineer one, and it had everything that I was after.
Yeah, perfect. Can you tell us a little bit about the avenue of entry that you chose for your selected role?
Sure. I'm a direct entry officer, so I had a job in a previous life and decided to change and just enter the Navy as direct entry. So I went straight to the Naval College, HMAS Creswell, conducted my officer training, and came straight in through that avenue.
I went through the ADFA scheme, so I joined and did the same first year, so we do the time at HMAS Creswell, we also do a bit of time at sea, learning about our job, and then I went off and did my degree.
Yeah. Similar to Tia, I went through the Australian Defence Force Academy, or ADFA, and did an electronics engineer degree there. Yeah.
And so you both, you all work on board a sub or a surface fleet on a ship. So can you tell me a little bit about life on board a ship and a sub, respectively?
So a ship is a very interesting place to live. So there's 200 people living on board, 138 meters of steel for sometimes a month at a time. So it's a very interesting environment. It's a lot of fun. It can be quite demanding, but it's a good place to live. And in terms of how it looks like in your day, you have your watches you conduct, and then the job's outside of that. So if you're not on watch, you're working or you're sleeping and going to the gym trying to work stuff out. But it's an interesting life.
For me, I've had the opportunity to work both on surface ships and submarines. For me, they don't really differ too much. The schedule and the routine's fairly similar. The main difference for an maritime warfare officer is that on surface ships we only do 4-hour watches, whereas on submarines we do 6 hours.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, life on board a submarine is different to anything that I've encountered before. It comes with a whole new set of challenges, but I feel that at each stage, both when I was on surface ships and on submarines, the training that you got ashore and in the introductory periods you got at sea really prepared you for that.
And so we've got some questions coming through immediately, which is wonderful. So do make sure you're sending your questions through. How can you make yourself more competitive for selection? So I guess we'll go right back to the application process with Defence Force recruiting. What tips would you give?
I think in terms of joining as an officer, the first thing you need to think about is that you're applying to be a leader of a highly trained team of very intelligent people. So when you're going through, I guess the expectation is that you really want it, that you're getting your paperwork done on time, that you're engaging with the recruiting center as often as you can, that you're interested in the role, and you're learning what Australia is doing abroad and here in terms of defence. I think that's probably for me, the first big step you can make to going towards being an effective officer and having a good application.
So following on from that, I'd say you want to be competitive on paper. So make sure that you're applying yourself at school, getting the best grades you can get, so that when it comes time for them to look at your transcripts, that you're quite competitive. If you are looking to go through the ADFA scheme, those results that you get at school are going to be quite important, because you do need to make sure you can get into the university and you achieve those results.
And like Josh and Tia were saying, I think the resources are out there. One of the key resources is going to be your local defence recruiting centre. So you have to think about yourself in a bit of a multifaceted aspect. If you're applying for an engineering role, you have to think about your compatibility or your competitiveness as an engineer. You're also a leader, so you're applying to be a naval officer as well. So you have to think about yourself in a rounded sense.
Okay. Lloyd asked, how does leadership apply to being a maritime warfare officer?
Good question, Lloyd. Look, our stream, being a maritime warfare officer, is the only stream that gets command of a warship or a boat at sea or submarine. So leadership is absolutely the linchpin of what we do. It's at the core of what being an officer is, and I guess more so as being a maritime warfare officer. So the training that we do leading up to that point when you take command, really, and with your leadership, is absolutely integral. Because really we want the whole way through to develop the officers that we all want to follow. So yeah, it's a huge part of what we do. What do you think of submarine world?
I think it's pretty similar. For maritime warfare officers, the biggest thing to think of is that you're taking charge of the ship or of the submarine. So you've got not only the asset but the people that you're looking after while they may be sleeping. So you want to make sure that you have not only an understanding of your job role, but I think the most important thing is to make sure that you are leading your people and everyone's achieving everything they need to make sure that everything runs smoothly and that everything's getting done, the routine's being upheld. You want to keep the commanding officer happy and make sure that everyone participates and make sure that we get there in the end.
Agree with that?
I do agree. You've done well. Yeah.
What training is involved, and is it the same for everybody? I presume by that I mean your three job roles. I guess we've got 2 maritime warfare officers and an electronics engineer. So how does the training differ for you?
In terms of how it differs, I guess in our answer we'll figure that out. But for us, we all do the similar course, and we go to the Naval College and we learn how to officer, march, put your boots on properly, iron your clothes, and which are all important skills, obviously. And then moving on from there, that's when we differ. So Tia and I, we went off to do the Maritime Warfare Officers course, which is over 4 phases. And culminates with getting your Bridge of War warfare certificate. So in terms of our training, it's varied. You go up north, you are on a small, like a patrol boat or another minor war vessel, learning how to do your initial navigation, and you come back and you put that in the simulator where I have the honor of working, and learning how to conduct a warfare watch, and then you take that to sea in a frigate. So then from going to submarines is completely different too.
So our initial maritime warfare officer training is exactly the same. We go through HMAS Coast Guard, do our training as Josh said, and then we go right up until we get our Bridge Warfare certificate, and that's when I then split off and I went off and specialised in submarines. From leaving the bridge sim and doing your consolidation there, you go off and you go to the submarine school, and that's when you commence on the path as a submariner. So initially it's all exactly the same, and that way then submariners know exactly what's happening on the surface ships as well.
So after my degree in military studies at ADFA, I did 6 months worth of training to apply those engineering skills in the Navy context, and how to have input in Navy processes. And then I went and spent 2 years on a surface ship. That was where I really had those, I suppose, everything that I'd learned in that 6 months of shore training put to the test. Got the opportunity to do a lot of ancillary things by choice. Spent some additional time on that surface ship, gaining more and more engineering qualifications the whole time. And then I suppose Tia and I get some commonality there. After she's finished her maritime warfare officer training, to a certain level, you have the option to go to the submarine school. And when I was at that certain level as well in engineering, that's when I elected to go to the submarine school.
And I suppose something that is specific to Submariner is your Dolphins. So can you tell me a little bit about what your Dolphins are to begin with and how you go about obtaining those?
Yep, so you can see them here. That's the symbol that we run with, and it's pretty much to be able to identify a submariner from somebody who's not qualified, and the sole purpose of that is to make sure that we're safe on board a submarine. So in order to get the qualification of your Dolphins, you need to complete some task books, which I'll let Marty lead into in a moment. And once you get awarded those, that's when you're deemed that you're safe on board.
Yeah, so submarine training essentially starts off with a suitability test. Once we've passed that, we move into 3 phases of shore training. The initial Collins class course, which everyone does, followed by, for us, we have officer training specific to keeping watch in the control room, learning how to use a periscope. It's not a natural skill anyone's born with. Learning how to apply navigation in a submarine environment. Dive navigation's a little bit different when you can't look outside the window, and as engineers we're right in on that too. And also monitoring and controlling the submarine's platform systems. So we've got that as our officer training, and then they'll go and do some maritime warfare officer specific training, hone the navigation a little bit more, and I'll go and learn more about those sort of intricate electronic systems on board the boat, how to look after them and how to fix them. And then we all come together again and go and spend some time consolidating all that knowledge, which takes generally between 9 to 10 months. We'll go and consolidate it for 3 to 6 months on a submarine. And eventually, when we've gained the trust of the commanding officer, we'll be given the Dolphins or the Submarine C qualification.
Fantastic. Now, a very common question coming through and that we get asked a lot. Do you ever get seasick?
Depends how rough it is, yeah. Everyone gets seasick at a certain time. Anyone who says they don't, I mean, there are the rare few, but I've seen it rough enough that the waves are coming up and hitting the bridge windows, or the spray anyway, and it's rough.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can get seasick.
How do you combat that?
You get your sea legs over a couple of days, so it does get better.
Yeah.
And there are also seasick tablets that the medics can give you that will help. And sleep, a lot of water, drink a lot of water, eat a lot of food, keep eating. It's good.
It's much nicer at 100 metres.
Yeah, we can't get away from it.
Now, Cameron asked to the Submariners here, is being 6'4" an issue?
Most certainly not. My executive officer on board was, I'm not exactly sure of his height, but he was a very large man, very tall, very broad, and he managed just fine. So I don't think the height's really an issue.
Yeah, we have a couple of guys just over 2 metres, and they seem to do just fine.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Julian asked, I'm off to Cerberus soon for a Submariner position. I'm really interested in how common the opportunity to leave Australia comes up. So I guess we can talk a little bit about travel and opportunities you've had.
In submarines or in general?
Either or. In general, we can talk to ships as well.
Okay, yeah, we go away a lot. Yeah, so the ships are always deploying. We have a really big focus. If you're watching the news, you can see that we're going up to the to visit a lot of countries up in Southeast Asia. We have a lot of international engagement that we do. It's part of our job, really. So we deploy a lot. We visit a lot of ports. Yeah.
Submarines are no different. Yeah, we're generally there with them, so submarines get plenty of port visits, get to see plenty of different places, so travel opportunity is definitely a big part of our job. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time around Southeast Asia and around Hawaii. Been to Hawaii 4 times, but I would just say don't discount the Australian port visits because they're great as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Shout out to Hobart, that's a great city. Yeah.
Yamaha asked, what is it like being deployed onto naval exercises with different nations?
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It adds a lot of flavor to it. I mean, when you work with different countries, everyone communicates differently, and it's sometimes you get to talk to them over radio, and it can be a really broadening experience for your own mariner skills, and it can be one of those like great opportunities to trade trinkets and badges with other navies and meet people I've met people from the French Navy and the Japanese Navy. And, great. Yeah, it's a fun time. It's one of the highlights of what we do, I think.
Yeah, it's really exciting working alongside them, but there's often opportunity to what we do call a cross deck, so being able to swap your position with one of theirs, so one sailor for one sailor, and that's a really awesome experience to be able to go and see how they operate at sea and the different routines that they run and what's also similar, which is always interesting, so plenty of opportunity.
I think it's a great opportunity as well to show off how professional our crews are and how capable our gear is. So I really enjoy that aspect of it. It's a little bit competitive, but it's great to be able to show off in that nature.
Now, Caleb asked, I'd like to join the Navy. Is engineering a good job? Might I guess we can throw that to you.
Yeah, I've loved every bit of it. The engineering side of it as well. Obviously, I started by saying that I was interested in all things technical. But one of the things I love now about my job, 12 and a bit years deep, is the fact that that's not all I do. I spend a lot of time personnel managing, a lot of time doing operational planning. As I said, a bit of navigation, bit of work on the periscope. Really breaks it up, and it hasn't felt like 12 years at all. I'm still very much an engineer and maintain all those qualifications, but there's a lot more to it than that.
Now, so you're an electronics engineer. We've got two maritime warfare officers here. Josh, we actually spent some time with you yesterday discussing your role in a bit more depth. So let's have a look at that now. I'm here with Josh. Josh, can you tell us where we are?
We're at the Bridge Training Facility at HMAS Watson. It's the premier warfighting training centre in the Royal Australian Navy. All of the maritime warfare officers who are going through their initial training come through here, and basically what we do in this space is the final culmination of their training throughout their time when they joined to now, making them into the warfighters that we send to sea.
So can you tell me a little bit about your job role and what some of your daily duties involve?
As a maritime warfare officer, I'm involved in the security and safety of the ship whilst we're sailing. So during my watch, which is a 4-hour period, I will have the trust of the captain to drive the ship, execute the navigation plan, and keep the ship safe. I'm involved in all the administration requirements as well and communicating with other ships that we might be in company with.
And so what are some of the different methods of entry for a maritime warfare officer, and what did you select?
There are two main methods. So you can join as a direct entry or through ADFA. So direct entry, you don't require a degree. You can go straight in and you join and attend the Royal Australian Naval College at HMAS Creswell, and then you do the 5-month course down there of your initial officer training. Or you can join through ADFA, which takes you again to RANC, the Naval College. You finish your training there. You conduct 6 months of on-the-job training here at the simulator and at sea, and then you proceed to get your degree. I am a direct entry. I had a degree before I joined, so I was able to select that avenue and come straight in and have some seniority because of my degree beforehand.
And so how important is leadership and management skills to a maritime warfare officer?
They're absolutely integral to being a maritime warfare officer. So ours is the only stream that can get you command of a ship in the end. So if you want to command one of Her Majesty's ships, you need to be a maritime warfare officer. So what we do here is we take students through a graduated leadership training scheme. We take them onto the bridge, we put them under pressure, we see how they manage their team when they're under pressure, because we really want to develop the officer that we want to work for. From where you start to where you finish being a commanding officer, the training between then and now is integral to shaping what kind of officer we want in charge of our ships.
Fantastic. Thanks, Josh.
You're welcome.
Please make sure you're sending your questions through. We are here for a little while longer to answer them for you, so we'll jump straight back into them. Lee asked, what is your daily life like as a maritime warfare officer?
When you're at sea, it's busy. So you're responsible for keeping your watches. So there are 4 hours at a time. And generally the routine runs where you will have 2 of those in a 24-hour period. So you have 8 hours that you're responsible for the safety of the ship at sea. Outside of that, you have some other roles you need to conduct, a lot of admin and looking after your division of sailors and various other bits and pieces, and fitting in a bit of PT or a bit of dinner, eating, showering. So it's a busy time. You're working around the clock, but you try and get a good few hours sleep in. But it's not, as an MO, it's pretty full on when you're at sea.
Doesn't differ too much on a submarine. We tend to run a similar sort of routine, except for, as I said before, it's 6 hours on, 6 hours off. So during that 6 hours, you might be on watch doing some navigation, we might be doing an exercise. There's plenty of different things that sort of occur in that 6 hours. And then in your 6 hours off, that's when you can have some downtime, get some sleep, have a meal, have a shower, read a book. So you still get the off time as well. So it's a similar routine. There is admin that needs to be done. There's jobs that need to be completed during that time on.
What about as an electronics engineer?
I suppose very, very similar to what Tia's doing there. 6 hours on, 6 hours off. Mm-hmm. The only difference is, well, it can differ subtly in what we do in our 6 hours off. I'll be doing some engineering admin or looking after engineering sailors as opposed to executive sailors. And we're all trying to get a shower in, get a little bit of exercise to stay sane, and make sure we get some quality sleep.
Yeah, Fantastic. Christine asked, I'm ex-Army, but the Navy looks great. How much time does a maritime warfare officer spend at sea?
Well, maritime warfare officer, I guess we're employed to go to sea. So unique to our role is that's where the majority of our early years are spent. There is opportunities to go on to get a short posting or work alongside, but yeah, for the first few years, you spend you are posted to a ship because you need to consolidate those skills. You need to learn the skills and then consolidate them. So it's part of what we do.
I suppose it varies on which ship you're posted to. Some ships might be alongside for a long period. Some ships might be going to sea. They might be going and doing a deployment. So it can vary. Your career could be quite sea heavy, or you could have a career that's got a lot of time alongside. It's sort of dependent on your driving factors and what the organisation needs from you.
That's a really great answer.
And how long will you spend on a sub at any given time?
That's a tough one, I suppose, and it really, really can vary. Submarine deployments, when we talk about a deployment, we talk about leaving from home port and the time between getting back to that home port. So they can be as short as 2 or 3 months or as long as 9 months, and they can span over a Christmas period. Of course, there are port visits where you'll spend weeks alongside. During a period that long, you'll need 3-week periods of maintenance where you can sort of get the scope to fly home or fly your partner to wherever you are. In single stints between port to port, Collins-class submarine can do up to a couple of months at sea. And it's really limited by how much food we can carry.
Yeah, sure.
Essentially.
Okay. Sanam asked, how did your educational knowledge assist you in successfully landing a career with the Navy? So, I mean, you had a totally different career before joining the Navy. You were a...
Primary school teacher.
Right. So...
How did it assist me? I think any skills you learn on the outside, and especially in another career, aid you in some way. I mean, I'm not teaching kids how to read anymore, but it's... I think there's still a lot to be gained from the confidence of standing in front of a classroom, being able to think on the fly, to plan and then conduct and execute a lesson. If we take that and we move it into a military mindset, then kind of constructing a serial, planning for a serial, and executing a serial with the people involved and making sure that it's briefed well and debriefed well is part of what we do, and that at the core is what a primary school teacher or what a teacher does. And so what it brought me was that, and the confidence and the ability to plan and to think on my feet, and also dealing with people too, because I mean our job, whilst being very much at sea and military focused, is very, very focused on the people that we work with and that we're engaging and the people who work for you. And so being able to engage on a level, like a personal level, is really important. And I think that educational or the education background supported me really well in that.
I mean, you both appointed straight out of school. How did you find, going straight to training from that?
I think the Navy prepares you pretty well along the way, so you don't really need to have any prior career or any huge educational background. Grade 12's enough, and they teach you along each step of the way what you need to know. For both of us, we went through ADFA and got our degree pretty early on in our career, so that definitely put us a step ahead of some of our peers, but it's not an absolute necessity. It's all about, as Josh said, working in a team environment. So for me, sporting teams growing up definitely taught me to have those skills to work in a team. But yeah, you don't really need any educational background as such.
I concur.
Connor asked, what was the most difficult or most nervous point for you throughout your application?
The OSB is pretty daunting.
And that's the...
Also, the Officer Selection Board,
yeah.
Apologies, is a pretty daunting process. But aside from myself, I joined at 27, so going through the medical process was hard. But we got there in the end, so
yeah, great.
That was good.
I think the whole process is a little bit daunting because you don't know what's coming next. It's kind of all a shock at each part of it. I think the first time you kind of come in front of a uniformed member, it can be a little bit daunting too, because all of a sudden that's where you want to be, and these are the people that you're going to work with one day. So I think that's probably a little bit daunting, but the whole way you provided support. So once you get to each step, you realise it's not actually as difficult as you thought it might have been.
I think certainly the process as a whole, it's a fair undertaking. You're worrying sometimes, have I got all my paperwork in order? Is it all 100%? Did that email go through? But I think definitely the Officer Selection Board, as the culmination of that process and as something that it really hinges on, first time sometimes meeting uniformed members of the service you're applying to, the Officer Selection Board was certainly the most nervous part for me, that's for sure.
Speaking of Officer Selection Board, Lloyd asked at your OSB, what is the most important thing you should try to get across to the three panellists?
Ooh, I might throw to Tia on that one first.
I think for me, the questions that they asked me a lot about were our neighbouring countries and what we're doing to assist them, what our ships are being sent away for. So just having that broader understanding of what's happening in the media, really, because it's sort of the main point of contact that you have before you join. I think having a knowledge of what's happening in the media is definitely an important aspect, and being able to explain to them that you are aware and that you are interested in the wider community, not just your own home life.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think having done a bit of that research is obviously going to be important, and knowing a little bit about the force you're intending to join is going to be important, but there's no way that any preparation or any amount of preparation is going to get you to know everything. So I think just conveying that you're comfortable in yourself and that you care is going to be a big part of it.
Absolutely. And how do you deal with the responsibility of managing what is essentially a $1 billion national asset?
How do you deal with that? I think you are well supported and trained the whole way through. So by the time you are managing and responsible for that asset, you are ready to do so. And you will never be thrown into the deep end where you're not, because that's just not how we work. So how you deal with it, I think for me, there's never a time before I go up on watch and take the ship that I'm not feeling nervous. And I think it's not because I'm nervous of something going wrong or something happening, it's because I'm responsible for the lives of 220 of my friends on board that ship and keeping them safe. And ultimately that's a big responsibility. And I think the weight of that should be respected. And I think if you can manage that, then I think you're on the right road to kind of dealing with the heaviness of that $1 billion asset. I think it's the people is more important in my mind.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of that. There's not really much more I can add, to be honest. Yeah.
I've never felt like I've had to do it on my own. I've never felt that I've been responsible for that $1 billion asset. I've always felt that there's a team of people around me and people that you can go to when you do need some help.
And a question for Tia, what is it like being a female on a submarine?
I've never really noticed it. It's never really been something that's come into my foremind. I suppose at the end of the day, you're an officer and that's the way it's seen. Everybody respects you the same, your job role is the same, you get paid the same amount, responsibilities are all the exact same. No one really ever makes comment about the fact that I'm a female or a male counterparts. It's just not really part of your daily lifestyle. You don't really particularly notice it. Yeah,
great. Now, Tia, we also got the opportunity to speak with you yesterday about your job role and how it might differ a little bit to the surface fleet equivalent of the Maritime Warfare Officer. So let's have a look at that. I'm here with Tia, who is a Maritime Warfare Officer Submariner. Tia, can you tell me how your job role might differ on board a submarine?
So on board a submarine, a Maritime Warfare Officer's job role is predominantly focused on navigation and safety of the submarine. I suppose it differs from surface fleet because of the different roles we have on board. So once we're qualified with our Dolphins, which is a qualification we get once we're deemed safe on board a submarine, you can take on different roles such as the Electronic Warfare Officer, Signals Communication Officer, Navigator, right up to the Commanding Officer. And those job roles can vary in themselves, but as I said before, the predominant role for us is safety of the submarine and navigation getting from point A to point B.
And what made you choose to serve the Navy as a submariner specifically? Was that something you'd always been interested in, or did you explore the submariner stream once you were appointed?
So I originally wanted to join as a submariner, but during my training I was exposed to different aspects within the Navy, and I started to follow those pathways. Once I got to the point where I had to make the decision, I did end up choosing to be a submariner. I was really glad I made that decision. I think the thing that really drove me to want to be a submariner was the fact that the platform itself is very different from anything else we have. It is really unique environment, and the vigorous training plan that is involved in becoming a submariner was something that really appealed to me, and the support and mentoring that you get along the way has been really rewarding.
And what would you say is your favourite aspect about being a submariner?
Definitely the people. The lifestyle we live in close confines with the entire crew. I think if you don't have the right people around you, it would be a difficult job. So the lifelong friendships that we develop are pretty unique, and are definitely stronger bonds than I'd find in any other workplace.
Great, thanks Tia. Make sure you're sending your questions through. We are here for a little while longer. We'll dive straight back in. Now Evelyn has asked, what motivated you to become a submariner over being part of the surface fleet?
I'll let you start.
Sure. As I said at the start, I've always been fascinated by submarines. I think that they're famous for having really small, really highly effective teams, and I think just from playing sport as a kid and sort of some of my fondest memories were as part of small teams achieving things, and that's a way to carry that into your professional life as well. It was definitely the smaller teams. So the crews on submarines are, because of the size of the vessel, we are smaller. And your individual departments as well are little sub-teams in that. It's all about the team.
And Tia?
We touched on it yesterday, so for me it was pretty much the platform. I think it's a really unique platform, and the set of skills that we acquire working in that environment are unique to any other, and that's probably what drove me towards that. I did my surface time, and I really, really enjoyed that as well, but I wanted something that was a little bit more challenging and worked in a smaller team.
Are there opportunities for further training and promotion throughout your career?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. So the Navy is great. You have opportunities to branch into all different areas. In the MO stream, there are various. You can be a principal warfare officer focusing in the air environment. You can be a principal warfare officer in the surface environment. Be a submariner. You can be a hydrographer. You can be a MET. So you can. MET being a meteorologist. So what you can do is you can stream in that direction, and then from there you continue to progress up the chain. You get promoted. So Sir is obviously lieutenant commander. You go up, you get more responsibility. Everything opens up to you until you get to the very top. So the opportunities really are endless, and the paths are also broad. So you can really change and move as you want.
Not only specialising, you can also gain additional educational qualifications. So at the moment I'm starting to look at studying my Masters. So I did a Bachelor obviously through ADFA, and now I'm looking to go on to the next step of my education. So there's always avenues to further develop your knowledge in different areas.
I suppose Marty would be important, I guess, for engineering particularly.
I think in any profession like that, I think it's important to maintain continual professional development, a little bit like you would if you were working for anybody else. I've started my Masters in Systems Engineering, and I've chose to sort of specialise some of those little subjects based on things that I've found in submarines that have interested me. I'm looking at reliability engineering now as something that I would have never looked at when I'd finished my undergraduate degree. I didn't think that's where I'd specialise, but now I'm loving that. And there's certainly follow-on postings and jobs in the Navy that where that would be really useful.
Definitely. Now I wonder where this question came from. Do you need to be an Australian citizen?
Do you want me to answer that? Yes.
So Josh, obviously you're from Canada.
Originally, yes. I'm from Canada. We moved here in '96 as a family. As I said, my dad's in the Navy. He changed from the Canadian Navy to the Australian Navy, and this is where I've been ever since. So I am an Australian citizen.
You do need to be an Australian citizen. You can check out the Defence Jobs website for specifics about citizenship requirements. It is all online for you as well. So do you have any advice for someone considering becoming an officer? Broad. We can start with you, Josh.
Advice. I think what we talked about before in terms of your application, before that even starts, I think really think about your commitment to what you want to do. Think about that you are aiming for a job that in the end has you responsible for other people and their safety and their security and their well-being, and that goes very far out. So you're engaged in people's lives, and in a really meaningful way, and in a way that you just So as an officer, you need to consider that it is a role that is not to be taken lightly. I think before you even start the application, that's something to think about.
Absolutely.
Something I'd probably recommend is people getting involved in their communities, learning to have those people skills, leadership skills, and working in environments that maybe they haven't worked in before could definitely start to prepare them for a job role as an officer in the Royal Australian Navy.
I don't think I can add anything to that. It's very good.
It was a good one. Yeah. And what kind of skills do you think you've picked up, while working in an officer capacity?
I think one of the really important things that I've picked up is the ability to work with lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds and many different ages and through different parts of their journey through life, and to work with them and then sometimes manage those people, which is something that is, especially when you're younger, is difficult. But the Navy trains you really well to be able to do that. So I think that's a really important skill that the Navy has taught me broadly.
Yeah, I definitely think people skills is something we work on every day. A big part of that is understanding that everybody has a right to dictate their own careers, and working with them, respecting their decisions, and then supporting them, providing the guidance that they need. Whether you agree with their decision or not, doesn't matter, you're there to support them. So it's definitely something I've learned along the way.
Yeah, I'd have to continue on with the people theme there. I'd say that one of the things that I've found I've gotten better at over the years is picking skills and picking interests in the team, and using people's skills and what they are actually interested in to help the team achieve better outcomes. Also, as an engineer as well, you pick up a lot of little technical hints and tricks along the way, sometimes from people who you wouldn't expect to pick them up from. But yeah, both technically and as a leader, I think I've picked up quite a bit.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, I suppose this could be for Submariner or Surface Fleet. Josh has asked, are the number of showers you can take restricted?
Do you guys want to go first?
No, you can go first. You give them the happening news.
No, not for us. So 2 a day is, Surface Fleet 2 a day.
Yeah, I would say there's probably a popular misconception out there that submariners don't shower very often and that we're dirty. I would like to challenge that. There's within reason, we can shower almost every day. The showers are clean. There's plenty enough water for you to get clean and enjoy that part of your day. We are obviously limited, like the boat is smaller and some of the tanks are smaller and whatnot, and there are considerations, but we're a lot cleaner than I think the public perception would have us.
I certainly like to shower.
Yeah.
Showering can do.
I'm sitting here and I'm not worried, it's okay.
How do you maintain your fitness on board? What's the equipment like?
If you're on a surface ship, we have the flight deck. Again, that's sea state dependent, or how rough it is out there. Also, what we're doing depending. But we have hangars as well, and there are gyms on board. So there's a lot of space to work out. And if you're on a surface ship, we also have physical trainers embarked who will train you and run sessions. So it's good.
Yeah, when I was on the surface fleet, I often used to try and get out and run back and forth on the flight deck. We tried to do it some afternoons, watch the sunset, so definitely an opportunity to still run around. Yeah. On submarines it's a little bit more limited, but there's still definitely an opportunity.
Yeah, we get a little bit more inventive. Most submarines have a rowing machine in the back half of the submarine. They're sort of nestled in a corridor, just enough room to walk past. Yep. But people like to get back there and challenge themselves on the rower. In the front of the boat, most submarines have often got either a spin bike or an elliptical. Some of them have both, and then we get sort of inventive with resistance bands and straps and basically anything that we can't drop and make a loud noise, because that's not what we're about.
How do you communicate with your family while you're at sea?
For us, it's really not too bad. We can send emails. There are some times where we can make phone calls. It all depends on what we're doing and where we are and what the requirements are in terms of how we communicate from home. But for the most part, on a surface fleet, we're very well connected to our loved ones at home.
Submarines are a little bit more restricted. We have what we call familygrams, so that's where our families can send messages to a system ashore, and then that'll get transferred to the ship, or to the boat I should say, and we can send them back. It really depends on where we are, what we're doing, as to the frequency of those.
I suppose we have to put a lot more emphasis on setting things up before we go away, because quite often there won't be an opportunity to send anything back from the submarine, information in, and just by the sheer nature of what a submarine does and its purpose of being covert, no transmissions out of the submarine often for extended periods of time. So we have a lot of emphasis on shore support for the families and making sure that they're as informed as they can be.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, Marty, we got to speak with you, of course, yesterday in regards to your job role as an electronics engineer submariner. So let's hear about the training involved in that role. I'm here with Marty. Marty, can you tell us where we are?
Hi, yeah, we're at the HMAS Kuttabul Heritage Centre, standing in front of an Oberon-class submarine's periscope.
Can you tell me a little bit about your job role as an electronics engineer submariner and what that job entails?
Sure, it's easiest to break that up in between what we do at sea and what we do alongside. At sea, we're an operator, so we're spending 6 hours on, 6 hours off, primarily in the control room, assisting with navigation, helping control the submarine's platform systems, and also keeping watch on the periscope, of course, keeping the submarine safe, as well as assisting the team of 10 technicians that we have solve problems, conduct maintenance, which is one of the things I really enjoy about the job. Alongside, the role shifts a lot more towards engineering and management, so there's always new and emerging technologies coming on board the platform, some of them more challenging to integrate than others, and also managing that team of 10 technicians through their alongside role as well.
Did you have any skills and qualifications prior to appointing?
No, I joined straight from Year 12, went to HMAS Creswell, did my initial Navy Officers course, then conducted the Navy Officer Year 1 scheme, which involved 3 months of touring around Navy shore establishments, figuring out who was who and what was where, and also spending 3 months at sea on a supply ship.
And can you tell me a little bit about the training involved in obtaining your Dolphins?
So to obtain your Dolphins, which is otherwise known as a Submarine Sea qualification, involves a submarine suitability test and then 3 phases of shore training. One of them is common to all submariners. The other one is common to all officers, which teaches you how to navigate, how to use periscopes, and essentially how to be an effective operator inside the submarine control room. And the last phase is the electrical engineer specific, teaching you more in depth about the equipment, so how to look after it and how to fix it.
Wonderful, thanks Marty. We are wrapping up shortly, so we will get through the last of the questions now. What are the regulations on facial hair and beards?
I'd say that the astute amongst you would have guessed that you can grow a beard in the Navy. At the start of initial training though, you do have to be clean shaven. Once you've finished that initial training, you can apply to cease shaving, at which point, if it is granted, which it normally is, you're given a 2-week period to see how it looks.
Right.
If it looks adequate and you're not patchy all over the place,
okay,
you're allowed to keep it. You have to maintain it. There's some measurements, of course, because
right,
it's military, but they're quite loose. So you see some different styles getting about. Certainly some different looks. But yes, you can have a beard. You can't have a moustache or any other sort of arrangement, though. It can't be the chopper.
Yeah, right. Oh, bummer. Christine asked, are you able to maintain a work-life balance considering you spend a lot of your career at sea?
Yeah, I think you can. It's just different. So you have to learn how that adjusts, and then you have to adjust with it. When you're at sea, obviously you're away, and so it's harder to do the things you like doing outside of work because you are at sea. But when you're alongside, then those things you can do again. So I play ice hockey, and I have managed to do that still. And yeah, I managed to do that in Navy too. So yeah.
Fantastic.
Go Jets.
I think for a lot of people, playing sport is a big part of their work-life balance. In a lot of the bases that we have sporting teams, so they might have a pool of players, and then when people go to sea, other people will play for them and vice versa. So there's always a team for you to play with when you get back, and you just jump back in and continue supporting your team. So there's definitely opportunities to still have the same hobbies that you had prior to joining the Navy. So.
And you play a sport?
I play basketball, yeah. So I've definitely had the opportunity with Navy to go and play around the country.
Wow.
And I still play in local sporting teams as well. So.
Cool.
Yeah, I think as Josh was saying, you can do work-life balance, but it is a little bit different when you're posted to a ship or a submarine, because your life sort of revolves around the program of that ship or submarine. So it becomes hard to do things like joining a cricket team because they train on Tuesdays and you might be at sea on a Tuesday. In the shore jobs though, like I've just moved to a shore job and I've joined an indoor cricket team and starting to do that again while I've got the chance, which is great. But you know, as Tia was saying, some of those defence associations and defence teams are set up in that way to cope with you being at sea.
And your defence hobby is quite interesting.
Yeah. So like, for example, I'm a member of the Australian Defence Force Parachuting Association. So they sponsor our attendance at a lot of state and national events, and also some international ones. And we have a defence parachuting competition every December for a week, where we don't have to take any leave. It's paid for work time, and we get some of the best coaches from around Australia, some of the best skydivers and canopy pilots from around Australia come and help us hone our skills and help us prepare to go and win at those national comps.
Far out. Apart from an attractive salary, what additional benefits are there? I guess we've just spoken about defence cover, your leave when you go for competitions. What other options are there?
Well, yeah, that's a pretty big one. That's kind of, I'd like to do that. Free medical, your healthcare is taken care of. The Navy will, again, also provide you with some financial support towards your rent, depending where you're living, which can be really helpful as well. They also allow you to study and can support you to study. So there's some money that can be given to help support you to study and further your qualifications. There's a lot of support there.
Yeah.
Other avenues that they can provide support is with your family. So if your partner's moving interstate with you, they can assist them getting a job, providing them assistance with study, so that they can also become more competitive in the employment market. So there's plenty of different opportunities that aren't just financial incentives.
Yeah, I think another important one is access to, like the Navy has legal officers, access to legal support and advice, access to psychology services, be that for social workers for at home, or psychologists for yourself or for your partner or your children, which can be quite expensive and hard to organise, especially around a seagoing schedule. And I suppose having those services built into the Navy is quite useful.
Tim asked, what are an officer's responsibilities when you're not on watch?
It depends on what roles you've been given. So some of I'll give you an example of some of the things that I was responsible for. So I was responsible for the damage control training that happened on board the ship. So looking at how we deal with fires or floods or any other incidents. So I was responsible for planning and then conducting those serials. This could be a whole ship, so it could be a lot of fun. I also was responsible for a division of sailors. So I looked after their well-being and their careers up to the point till they left the ship. I was also responsible for waste management on board. So yeah, it's you can be responsible for security. You can be responsible for health and well-being. There's a lot of things you can be given jobs to be responsible for.
Yeah, a lot of them are admin based, so there is a lot of paperwork that does need to be done in order to ensure that things are done correctly and that they are monitored. So as stated already, there's so many different job roles we can take on outside of being on watch, and that's exactly the same whether it be for submarines or for surface ships.
Yeah, I would say, well, to start off watch time is where we'll either get some respite or do those ancillary duties, and I wouldn't be too concerned if a lot of those ancillary duties didn't sound like they were your cup of tea, because no 2 days are ever the same, and you won't get a chance to get bored of it most of the time. There's always something new coming up, so something new to look forward to as well.
And each one of those jobs is a growing thing. So I've never done any damage control training before, but I got to learn that and got to kind of extend myself in that way. So it's as Sir said, it's not always your cup of tea, but in that it kind of can grow you and give you access to new things, and yeah, it's different.
What would you say is a challenging aspect of your job?
A challenging aspect of being a maritime warfare officer, I think, is learning how to manage your sea life and your home life. So you're having a family at home. It's working out how you balance your love of the sea with your love of your family and how that balance works. And I think the whole it's not something that comes naturally to most people. It's not something that you are given a card to read out and you know how to do it. You have to kind of work it out and negotiate with your partner and with yourself. So that's challenging. It's good, but it's challenging.
I think for me, the challenge is never knowing where we're going next. So in 12 months' time, I'm not sure where I'll be posted to or what I'll be doing. So I suppose you can look at it as a challenge and as a positive, because I've had the opportunity to live in nearly every state in the country, and I've lived abroad. So it's always changing. So it can be challenging planning your future life, but for me, it's worked. So
I think definitely to echo what the guys have said, I think the challenges are going to be around dealing with the sea-shore ratio. Those ratios and those sort of timeframes aren't always set in stone, and they change. Sometimes they extend and sometimes they get shorter. It can be just as frustrating when it gets shorter as when it gets longer. When you say goodbye to someone and it's going to be for months, and then you come home in the afternoon and they say, "What are you doing home? You're supposed to be gone." So those things can be a challenge, but at the same time, it's all part of it, and you get given the tools, and we have the support systems in place, and I've always felt confident and comfortable at work, sort of expressing those feelings, and there's always someone to turn to, I think.
Yeah, great. On the flip side of that, what would you say is the best part of your job?
Best part of my job. I think the best part of my job, and I've been lucky enough to drive a ship that can achieve 30 knots, which is quite quick for a ship. Okay. The best part of my job is throwing that around at max speed. That's a lot of fun. Yep. When you're pushing that much steel through the ocean at that much speed, it's good. Yeah.
You said you joined to drive ships.
And so. I did. Yeah. I've driven a ship. Yeah, it's been good.
I suppose it's for every maritime warfare officer. I don't think you can really beat that. Yeah. I suppose another part of it is the travel opportunities that we get. Being able to go to different port visits, do postings overseas. So it's got the opportunity of one coming up. So there's always opportunities to travel. So that's probably one of the highlights.
And where are you headed, Marty?
Next year, myself and my wife moved to France for 3 years. So we're going to assist in the Future Submarine program in France for 3 years. That'll be exciting. Got to learn some French first. And really brush up on that. But yeah, that's a good opportunity. Probably the thing that I would say throughout my career that I think I've most enjoyed is being able to watch some of the people in your team grow and get more experience, get more knowledgeable, and then watching them teach other people is quite cool.
Okay. And last question, Evelyn asked, what has been your greatest career highlight to date?
Greatest career highlight. I think for me, my greatest career highlight was achieving my platform endorsement in HMAS Melbourne. I have to say that was probably my greatest achievement thus far. That's the culmination of all that training and effort and energy put into that kind of last moment when the captain hands you a certificate and says, "I trust you to drive my ship." It's pretty big.
Absolutely.
Keep stealing my thunder.
That's the benefit of going first.
Yeah. I suppose that's the end goal for every maritime warfare officer is to get their bridge warfare certificate and their platform endorsement. I did both of them at sea at the same time on HMAS Darwin. So for me, that was a really big highlight of my career, knowing that I finally got to the end point that I've been working towards. Obviously, it's not the end, because then you go and specialise as a submariner and it all starts again, but it's definitely a really rewarding moment in your career. I suppose the other one that I'd probably touch on is I got to live abroad for 6 months in Indonesia, and that really opened my eyes to the different opportunities that we have, and I thought that was really awesome. It was a opportunity I wasn't expecting to, I think, so that kind of threw me by surprise that was there. But yeah, definitely a highlight.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I think every submariner will remember the day they got their Dolphins, 15th of November 2015 for me, early afternoon in Jervis Bay. But my career highlight was definitely the day that I stepped off my last submarine after having done 3 years there, and looked back on that posting. I think it wasn't just, it wasn't that day, it was that whole 3 years, that whole combined memory. It's definitely the highlight of my career.
That's amazing. Well, that is all we have time for today. Thank you so much for your questions, everyone. Please remember you can jump onto the Defence Jobs website to apply online or find out some more information, particularly about these job roles. Thank you guys for sitting with me tonight and answering these questions. Any questions that we haven't answered, we will get back to over the next few days. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.